Hello, family, and welcome to another episode of Role Model Maker Experts Cafe. I'm your host, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer, and I have with me today an amazing lady, Miss Tiffany West. Tiffany, I hope I said the name right, just making sure. Awesome. Tiffany has been in our community and is an amazing human being. I love how she shows up in the world. So I wanted you guys to kind of tune in and listen to what she's got to say. So, Tiffany, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you got involved doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. How do I condense this story? So, I am an emotional care coach. I'm a certified life, health, and transformational coach. And my specialty is focusing on emotional health and emotional healing. I have found that that is the root of all of our dismay and all of our dis-ease is not healing our unresolved emotional wounds and some under the radar traumas that we may not realize we have experienced as children. So I grew up as a very highly sensitive soul, very sensitive emotionally, very sensitive physically. Like any little thing would just rattle my entire system, and back then that wasn't a term. So my parents, bless their hearts, they just didn't know what to do with my big feelings and my emotions and everything that I was picking up on in the outside world and trying to process that internally. So I developed anxiety very early as a child. It was undiagnosed. I didn't know I had it. My parents didn't realize I had it. But into adulthood, that obviously started to rear other issues in my health. So come to my early 20s, I started experiencing a ton of health symptoms, chronic pain, digestive issues, hair loss, skin rashes, asthma, eczema, like you name it, I had it. And after having my first son, I was a single mom. So my life was very stressful. I was hustling and bustling and trying to make ends meet. And I worked a full-time job in corporate America. And, I felt like I could handle all that, but it wasn't until my body said, no, something's got to give here, something's off base. And I just really wasn't honoring what I needed physically, mentally, or emotionally. So that is what really catapulted me into the coaching industry because I was looking for help with my own nutrition. Doctors had told me for over 10 years that there was nothing they could do. They didn't see anything wrong, but I felt awful inside. And I tried changing my diet. I worked with clients through my health coaching, era, and we would all get great results and then we would hit a plateau. And I would always notice that myself and my clients would beat ourselves up really badly when we couldn't stick to these habits we knew were good for us and we knew we wanted to implement. And so that is what took me into studying more about the root of emotional health and our physical and mental well-being. I started really studying about trauma, relational trauma, developmental trauma, and very covert trauma that happens when we don't realize there's been a really big event, but it affected our system. So that's kind of what brought me to what I'm doing now as I work with women and families, especially women who are highly sensitive like myself, because I have found that to be my gift. And my big emotions is what helps me get myself out there in the world and really have compassion and hold space and help people heal their own traumas and get their emotional world and mental world into harmony. And so I help moms, I help busy women, professionals. I really help them manage their inner world so that they can create what they want on the outside without exerting so much effort and running their bodies to the ground, burning themselves completely out. And so that is the heart of what I'm doing now is just really helping, people get to that root of what is going on and what their symptoms are trying to tell them. And one side note there, I was a single mom with my oldest, like I said, and I just had another baby 3 years ago. Big gap, right? My oldest is 19, but I really wanted a family and I really wanted to pursue what I wanted in my life. And I'm so grateful to have him. And he is a very highly sensitive child. So I have learned a lot over these last 3 years about nervous system regulation, handling children that have big major meltdowns. He holds a ton of anger for no apparent reason. And so it's really deep into my work with the emotional care and with parents and mothers, especially to help them navigate that as well, because that is a challenge that I've overcome or I'm overcoming as we speak. So
I love the approach, and I love how you started, first of all, that a lot of times we have these goals or we have these challenges, And ultimately, it comes down to this one core thing to focus on. And I totally agree. I mean, I tend to work on the more of the global scale type of like looking at what the countries are doing. And it's the same thing is how well
Yeah.
are they able to actually go ahead and get their points across and actually construct and collaborate effectively. And oftentimes it comes back to the same thing that you kind of misprioritize things. And along the way, eventually things start breaking down. And so
Yep.
you have to kind of go back to the foundation. Now, with children, I'm really big on creating a very solid, very firm and broad foundation. But when we're talking about people who have been in this world for a while, that foundation, as solid as it may have been, might have some cracks in it now. So we
Absolutely.
need to go ahead and
Absolutely.
address those cracks
Uh,
so that we can continue to build on it. Because regardless of what the goal is up there, you have to start at that foundation. I love your approach for that.
Thank you.
So tell us in your journey that you've gone, you mentioned health before, you talk about emotional regulation. I also noticed something else, which actually I have in common as well, that when when anybody, any human being starts seeing a challenge or has a goal and sees why they're having trouble or trying to figure out why they're having trouble achieving their goals, and they often comes back and it's like, I guess there is this thing about me and it's not changeable. Like you were talking about emotional sensitivity and looking at it as a flaw, where in fact it's not, it's a gift. And it depends on how you use it. Yeah, if you take a knife and you want to hammer something, the knife has flaws, but the
Yeah.
reality is that you can perfectly go and use a tool, a hammer, basically, and also better utilize your knife for what it's intended for. Anyways, I got into
Absolutely.
construction because there's a lot of construction
I
going
love
on
the
around
analogy
here.
though.
But
That's
yeah,
exactly right.
so in your approach, you mentioned health, you mentioned emotional regulation. Where do people begin? What's the first thing that kind of is a signal that, here's a challenge, here's something that, uh, I need to address, or what do you see your clients come to you and they're complaining about?
Absolutely. Number one is physical health symptoms. Like if you are experiencing, and especially when they're chronic, the chronic health symptoms is the body's way of saying, "Hey, something is out of balance here. Something's out of whack. I need your attention. I need you to connect with me." So that's what I would start with. Is if you're experiencing nagging symptoms that don't go away. Like in my early 20s, I had chronic headaches and I popped Excedrin migraine like they were candy, ignoring the message my body was trying to tell me, the warning signs of my body saying, "Hey, the way you're living isn't aligned with your truth. We got to redo that foundation, like you said." Secondly, is if you're experiencing like irritability, your moods, if you're constantly irritable, you're snapping, you find yourself yelling at your kids and then feeling super guilty afterwards, snapping at your husband, biting people's heads off, and just not being proud of that behavior afterwards. Those are all mental symptoms too, that the body is in need of something and it can't keep operating the way that we are taught in our culture to push through and push and achieve and not take into account our well-being and especially our emotional well-being. So the first place is to be just to connect with what is going on with you, what is happening, start to create some self-awareness around, do I feel okay? Right? And when I don't feel okay, how am I treating myself? Am I taking care of myself? Am I stopping? Am I trying to fix and mask the symptoms versus getting to the root of what the body and the symptoms are wanting me to know? So that would be a very easy practical step, is to just connect with what is happening and bring some awareness to something feels off, and maybe there's a message here that I can follow this trail and get to the bottom of it instead of trying to get rid of symptoms, which is total opposite of what we're taught in our culture. So no shame and no blame if that's what you're used to doing. That's what I did for years too. It just didn't work, which is what forced me to dig deeper and find another way.
Well, I actually wanted to mention this because a large number of our audiences are females that are either ultra busy or ultra responsible, or there's this also other factor that there's a sense of shame and guilt for stopping and looking inwards. So do you want to mention that or? how to address that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. First thing I want to tell all the moms out there, this is such a normal response for all of us. We are taught to be superwomen. We're taught to put our own needs aside, and it makes us a good mom when we're tired and we're on E, but we're still giving and giving and giving to take care of our children and our family and our loved ones in our community. So this is not your fault. It is definitely a cultural conditioning that a lot of us have experienced, not all, but many of us have been under the spell of having to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So it makes sense that when you want to stop and rest, your brain is saying, no, that's not safe. How could you do that? Everything's going to fall apart. And that's where the guilt comes up. As an emotional care coach, that's what I help women feel through and work through, because what we're not taught is those emotions are really here with a message, and they're here to serve us and guide us and point us in the right direction of what we actually need. And a lot of times it's breaking down that conditioning and those beliefs and then working with what's under the surface so that we can, excuse me, so that we can begin to really unravel what it is that we need and learn how to meet those needs in a way we've probably never been taught or had modeled to us.
I love this approach of, instead of pushing the feelings down or trying to resolve them, using them instead as a guiding voice, as a guideline, as something that will help us and direct us to course correct or to go faster towards what it is that we want to achieve. That they're not there to slow us down, they're actually there to speed us up, so long
Absolutely.
as we are willing to listen to them. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really cool. All right, so let's get some practical stuff for our parents that are there and just things are coming down. Now, what would be a takeaway, something that they could start implementing from listening to our conversation today? I know we've already talked about a couple of key points, so for those of you, you might want to come back and listen to this a second time. But what would be a key point, something that we could do on a day-to-day that can move us forward in our evolution as a self and also how we show up in the world?
Absolutely. So the number one thing is self-validation. We are not validated enough in our society. A lot of people are not taught that validation is actually super healing. And so we usually take on the same self-judgment that other people have judged us or criticized us for. So number one is when you are feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling emotionally drained or tapped or guilty for taking a break because you're on go, 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 go. First thing to do is to stop and be like, wow, this is a lot. Like I'm dealing with a lot, or I'm feeling very overwhelmed. Just acknowledging to yourself and venting to yourself and being that safe space for yourself to say, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. So instead of telling myself, I should be able to push through this and taking out the bat and beating yourself up, I encourage you to put that bat down and just really come in. And you don't have to lather yourself up with a lot of self compassion if it's not something you're used to, but just starting to bring that awareness to, I always like to put my hands on my chest and make contact with my body so I can feel supported and say, wow, I'm feeling really angry. I'm feeling really overwhelmed, or I'm feeling really sad. And I don't know why, but I don't have to know why. Just really coming in and saying, of course, you're feeling overwhelmed. Look at all of the things that you're doing. Look at all of the stuff on your plate and start recognizing yourself for all that you are doing, because we tend to look at all of the places where we're coming up short and we're not doing enough or what's missing. And that is our brain's way of trying to keep us safe, but to start bringing an awareness to that and consciously saying, you know what, I'm not going to choose to buy into that story that I'm not enough or I'm not doing enough, even though it feels that way. And I'm going to start with just validating my experience right now. Like this is a heavy load and I'm having a hard time carrying it. And that can take you a long way. You'll start to notice shifts in your body. You'll start to feel a little more relaxed. And most importantly, you're going to feel heard and seen and understood by yourself. And that is the start of kind of opening up this flower so it can bloom.
Well, I'm actually going to mention that for those of you who are listening and also are males, not necessarily females, this is a really, really important thing because oftentimes we are this fix it kind of personality or we want to figure out
Yeah,
why. And I love the fact that, Tiffany, you said it's okay to acknowledge a feeling without having to figure out why or how to fix it. Because sometimes when you're exhausted, that might be just enough for you to never even acknowledge the feeling. So to be able
Mhm.
to just say, you know what, we deal with that later,
Yeah,
and just stopping and acknowledging it, not only can make you a lot healthier, but also calms you down to such a level that now you can actually have the right tools to actually take out the why and all of those things that we were talking about. So,
absolutely.
cool.
Then you'll have the space to problem solve or solution seek, and for men, especially men, poor things, you guys are taught at a very young age not to be vulnerable, not to feel your emotions, stuff that away, put it aside, and you use your head and you be headstrong and you go out there and you fix and you solve. And that is a beautiful attribute of the men in our planet. And it's also too can work against the men if we're not combining this emotional awareness and really giving yourself permission to just be where you are without having to do anything necessarily in the moment. That'll give you the energy and the space you need, and to freeze up your brain from having to be in survival mode. You're limited to your brain's creativity when it's having to survive. So the more we can relax and give ourselves that validation, it calms our nervous system down, and it sends a message that, oh, we're safe in this moment. We don't have to go out and fight a bear. And then your brain can optimize and work the way that it's meant to work and be more creative for you.
Really cool subject. We could talk about this for a few more hours. So, before we lose audiences, because I know time is precious, Tiffany, how can people find out more about you and connect with you? This is really important stuff.
Absolutely. My website is www.tiffanycoachme.com. You can book a free wake up call with me if you're wanting to dig more into this and learn more about your nervous system and your precious body and how you can get out of that emotional overwhelm. And I'm on all the social media platforms just about as well. So
So, guys, I want to make sure that you take the moment, pause whatever it is you're doing, because that is also important. You can't always keep going. And we need to role model all of these behaviors to the kids. They can't go from school to after school to homework to dinner to sleep and then repeat process, right? What are we teaching them? So, we want to make sure you pause, role model that behavior, go to the description right now, click on the links, and connect. Connecting is really important. Role model the behavior of connecting. Connect with Tiffany. If you haven't already done so, connect with the channel, hit subscribe so you get notified of all the experts that come here and share gifts. And also make sure that you look for support, ask for support. We need to role model the behavior that it's okay that we don't have all the answers, that there are good people in the world that want to support us, want to make the world a better place, and it is okay for us to ask for help. So please make sure you reach out to Tiffany. And Tiffany, thank you so much for taking this time. This was
thank you, Dr.
delightful.
Al.
Any final words for our audience members before we finish today?
Yeah, I love the pause. Just give yourself permission to pause, even if it's 2 seconds. Connect with yourself, validate yourself, and say, "Hey, I'm here." Right? I know this is hard. I know this is a lot, and I just want to say to people out there, you can absolutely do it alone. You have the ability to do it alone. I believe in everybody's power. However, you don't have to make it harder for yourself. So, like Dr. L said, get the help, get the support. It's out here to help you grow and flourish and be the best role model you can be for your little kiddos.
Until next time, guys. Cheers.